In the cold, dark world of military combat, we often hear stories of heroes and villains, of battles won and lost. But what about the ones we don't hear? The stories of those who push past duty and regulation, who sacrifice everything for the lives of strangers, and who find a way to become a beacon of hope in the darkest of nights. This is the story of Captain Reena Torres, a helicopter pilot whose hands, though stained with the grit and grime of war, move with the precision and grace of a pianist. Tonight, she's not just a soldier, she's a guardian angel with a roaring set of wings, flying to a place where death is the only certainty, and she's ready to fly until the very last drop of fuel to make sure everyone she's protecting comes home. Captain Reena Torres strode briskly across the cold tarmac of Bram Airfield, her helmet tucked tightly under one arm as the night vibrated with the distant thrum of helicopter roars. The Apache crouched in the dark, a steel predator at rest, fully armed, engines whining in a rising pitch. Torres's movements were practiced, almost ritualistic. She'd walked this path more times than she could count, yet the weight of each mission pressed against her ribs like the first. Tonight's assignment carried the same whisper as all the others. This could be the one that doesn't bring you home. Her mission was to fly cover for a SEAL extraction in hostile mountain territory, a red zone laced with insurgent routes and narrow kill valleys. The briefing had been clipped, last minute, classified to the teeth. No time for questions, and none that she would have asked anyway. These were the missions she was always handed, the ones she never turned down. Inside the briefing room, the air was thick with tension and the faint hum of electronics. 6 SEALs leaned over a satellite projection of the Alakastra Valley. Jagged elevation lines sprawled across the screen, with a single red dot pulsing at the base of a canyon, their extraction point, a known Taliban stronghold. Commander Rohr, the SEAL team leader, looked up as Torres entered. His neck was thick, his posture all authority, the weight of 3 combat tours carved into his stance. "You're our eyes tonight," he asked, voice balanced between curiosity and challenge. "I'm your sword," Torres said evenly. Rohr's expression shifted to a slow, almost reluctant nod. "They say you fly like the devil's riding shotgun." Behind her, Warrant Officer Malik, her co-pilot, smirked. Devil rides with her just to pick up a few tips. A few of the SEALs chuckled, the tension cracking for a heartbeat, except for Sergeant Briggs. Arms crossed, jaw set, he didn't blink. "Not used to flying with women?" Torres asked, tone as casual as a blade sliding free. "Just not used to pilots who break the rules," Briggs shot back. "That's funny," she said without missing a beat. "Neither are the Taliban." The air held a sharp edge for a moment, broken only by Rohr's command voice. "All right, enough. Clock's running." He tapped the map. "Our CIA asset is embedded with a local elder. The elder's dead, killed in an IED ambush. Asset's cover is blown. We get him out before the enemy closes in. 15 minutes on the ground. Max." "Resistance?" Malik asked. "Intel says light patrols, maybe a handful of local fighters," Rohr said, then added with a shrug. "But intel out here is a coin toss." Torres's gaze narrowed. She didn't believe the numbers either. "Air support?" she asked. "You're it." "Then they're covered," she said, simple as a promise. Minutes later, boots crunched across gravel. The SEALs loaded into a waiting Black Hawk already spinning for liftoff, while Torres and Malik climbed into the Apache's cockpit. Night vision goggles clicked into place. Her gloved fingers curled over the cyclic and throttle like a pianist, settling at the keys, and with a deep, vibrating roar, the Apache clawed itself into the black sky. Afghanistan unfolded beneath them, dark mountains jagged against a colder darkness, the silence of a land that was never truly silent. It was a silence that hummed with things unseen. "This feels wrong," Malik said over comms, his voice low. "It's Afghanistan," Torres replied. "Everything feels wrong." The Black Hawk dipped into a narrow valley that seemed made for an ambush rather than a landing. Torres's visor swept the terrain, reading heat signatures, scanning for anything that moved against the rhythm of the night. 2 clicks from LZ, Malik reported. The landing zone appeared as a dry riverbed hemmed in by steep, ragged rock. Too tight. Chosen for necessity, not safety. Dust swirled below as the Blackhawk flared for touchdown. "This is Bravo team, touching down, no contact," came the radio call. Torres circled above, eyes fixed on the ridgelines. Something in the pattern of the land itched at her instincts. Then she saw them. Tiny bursts of heat high on a slope. "Movement northwest," she said. "Three, no, four targets. Two watching, two shifting." Base didn't answer, just static. On the ground, the SEALs spread into formation. Dust ghosted around them as Briggs approached a figure slumped under an overhang, the CIA asset. Blood darkened his pant leg, barely conscious. "Package secured," Briggs reported. The crack of a single rifle shot split the night. Then the canyon erupted. Gunfire roared from the cliffs, muzzle flashes strobing like a hellish light show. An RPG hissed from the rocks and detonated yards from the Blackhawk, throwing dirt and fire into the air. "Ambush!" Roar bellowed. "Multiple contacts! High ground! All directions!" The Blackhawk yanked skyward, evasive, leaving the SEALs exposed. From her orbit above, Torres saw it all. Cold surged through her veins. "Requesting immediate clearance to engage," she snapped. "Stand by for confirmation," came the delayed voice in her headset. Another hail of fire tore through the canyon. "Negative," Torres muttered to herself. "Standing by is how they die." She rolled the Apache into a dive. "We're going in," Malik said, steady as steel. "Damn right we are." Weapon systems armed, she locked onto the clustered heat blooms and squeezed the trigger. The night exploded. The Apache's chain gun roared, spitting fire into the ridgevine. Tracer rounds tore through the dark, sparking rock and flesh alike. Torres flew low, blades slicing within feet of the cliffs as the ground erupted beneath her fire. Enemy return fire sputtered. Panicked. "Three on the ridge, left slope," Malik called. "Another group behind the second rise." "Copy," she said, voice cool, hands precise. Another burst lit the hillside. Insurgents screamed and scattered, shadows breaking from their hiding spots. Below, Briggs dragged the wounded asset to cover behind jagged stone. Roar barked orders while returning fire, rifle burning hot in his hands. "Bravo team, fall back. Torres is burning the sky." Sir. And she was. From above, the battlefield unfolded like a deadly board game. The enemy wasn't disorganized rabble. They were ready, equipped, positioned to kill. This wasn't a random ambush. It was a trap, perfectly laid. "They knew our route," Malik said, flipping through thermal scans, disbelief sharp in his tone. "Where the hell did they get this intel?" Torres didn't answer. She couldn't. The gunfire below was rising, the night alive with fire and death. The trails of RPGs tore through the night like fiery comets, one detonating barely 10 meters from the SEAL team's fallback position. Captain Reena Torres yanked the Apache into a hard left bank, her hands steady on the cyclic despite the chaos below. A Hellfire missile screamed from the right pod, streaking across the valley before slamming into a rocky outcrop swarming with insurgents. The explosion sent fire and shards of stone into the air, painting the night in orange and gray. Down below, Commander Rohr pressed himself tight against a boulder, the heat from the blast licking at his cheek. "Unit, that Apache isn't just covering us," he muttered into his mic, voice tight with adrenaline. "It's saving us." Torres kept the helicopter low, circling tighter with every pass, forcing the enemy to retreat step by step. Her world was reduced to the rhythm of the rotor, the hiss of the wind, and the pulsing flare of enemy fire. Every maneuver was a gamble. Every second, death brushed past her canopy. "Fuel at 50%, Warrant Officer Malik warned, scanning the gauges. "And we've already lost one missile rack." "It doesn't matter," Torres said without hesitation, her voice calm in the chaos. "We're not leaving until they're out." Command finally crackled through the radio, sharp and distant. "Air unit, this is command. Abort direct engagement. Clear the zone for airstrike. ETI 20 minutes. "Too long," Torres snapped. She could see the SEALs pinned down, shadows flitting between rocks. "They don't have 20 minutes. Abort engagement. That's a direct order." Torres thumbed the radio mute. Malik glanced at her, jaw tight. "You know you're going to take the heat for this." "If I don't," she said, watching another RPG spiral past, "they'll die cold." The Apache jolted violently as the rocket missed by inches, the tail whipping in the turbulence. Red lights flared across the dashboard. "Tail boom integrity warning," Malik called out. "Still flying," she replied, forcing the chopper into another steep dive. Her eyes caught a truck barreling down a switchback road, a technical with a heavy machine gun. Reinforcements. Her pulse quickened, but her voice stayed even. "Contact north slope, moving fast." "No ordnance left on that side," Malik reminded her own. "Cannon's all I need." She lined up the shot. The 30-millimeter chain gun roared to life, a staccato thunder that ripped through the truck. Tires burst, metal tore. The vehicle flipped end over end before erupting in flames, tumbling down the rocky slope. A cheer erupted over the comms. "You see that?" Sergeant Briggs shouted. "She just clipped a moving truck mid-slope." Torres didn't smile. Her eyes kept sweeping the battlefield. She wasn't here for glory. She was here to clear the path. Then her thermal display flared. Heat signatures, South Valley, fighters pouring from a cave system, moving to encircle the fallback route. "They're going to cut them off," Malik said, voice tight. "Not while I'm in the ski," Torres growled. Fuel dropped to 30%. One more hit and they'd never make it back. She knew it. Malik knew it. "I won't blame you if you tell me to climb out now," she said quietly. He stared at her for a beat, then back to the targeting screen. "You crash, I crash. Nobody leaves alone." Her grip on the cyclic tightened. "Good." The next wave of insurgents scrambled into elevated positions, RPGs slung over their shoulders. Torres had no missiles left, only the cannon, and something no weapon could match. Instinct, rage, and a will that refused to bend. She yanked the Apache skyward, climbing above the entire battlefield. For 2 heartbeats, the world stilled. Then she dove. The helicopter screamed toward the valley floor. Malik cursed as the ground surged upward. Torres squeezed the trigger. The cannon erupted, savage and relentless. Rocks disintegrated. Sandbags flew. Fighters tumbled like rag dolls under the torrent of metal. On the ground, Briggs crouched over a bleeding teammate, staring skyward in awe. "She's not just covering us," he muttered. "She's carving us a damn road." Dust settled. The fallback route was open again. "We're moving," Ward barked over comms. "Secondary LZ, 1 click east." "Copy that," Torres said. "We'll lead you in." The Apache hovered above them, scorched and dented, tail streaked with bullet scars, but still alive. Still furious. The path east was a treacherous ribbon of stone, carved by time and water. The SEALs moved in staggered formation, carrying the injured CIA asset between them. Dust clung to their faces. Every step was a battle against exhaustion and fear. "Keep moving," Roar urged. Voice clipped. "We stop, we die." Above, the Apaches shadowed them like a hawk, rotors tearing the air. Torres scanned ahead, thermal vision flickering. 2 insurgents crouched behind boulders with ARPs, waiting for the perfect shot. 2 contacts, she said. "No missiles left," Malik reminded her. "Then we get close." She dropped the Apache low, rotor wash blasting the valley in a storm of dust and grit. The insurgents realized too late. One tried to aim, but the cannon ripped the rock apart, bodies and debris scattering into the darkness. The SEALs didn't flinch. They were locked into the rhythm of survival, moving as one with the gunship above. Then the night split with the shriek of another RPG. It scraped past the tail, close enough to scorch the paint. The Apache lurched, alarm screaming. "Rear stabilizers cracked," Malik yelled. "Can we stay up?" "For now." Torres spun the bird into a hard right bank, drawing fire away from the team below. "They're flanking west," Malik said, eyes on the ridge. 6 fighters moving fast. She didn't hesitate. The Apache dove again, the earth rushing up. The cannon thundered mid-fall, tearing through the fighters in a line of fire and steel. One man vanished where he stood. Another crawled, then disappeared under the storm of rounds. Silence. Then the comms erupted with a cheer. Briggs wiped blood from his sleeve, staring at the sky. "She's not giving cover," he said. "She's clearing the damn road." Roar's voice crackled in. "Air unit, we're closing on the secondary LZ. ETA 6 minutes. Can you hold them?" "Watch me," Torres replied. The sky lit up once more. Insurgents surged from the eastern slope, fearless and furious, outnumbered, surrounded. And still she came. The Apache thundered forward, fire and metal pouring from its very bones. Malik called out targets, 2 here, 4 there, another truck approaching from the south. The night was alive with fury, the rhythm of war pounding in every heartbeat. Fuel was down to 15%, and the warning lights blinked their red accusations across the Apache's cockpit. "Fuel critical," Malik called out, his voice taut but steady. Captain Reena Torres didn't answer. Her gaze was locked on the canyon below, where a battered pickup truck, a technical with a mounted 50 cal, roared toward the SEAL team. Her jaw tightened. She dropped the Apache low, skimming the cliff face so close, the rotors hummed against the stone. A squeeze of the trigger, and the helicopter spat its final burst from the chain gun. The truck erupted in a bloom of fire and steel. Shrapnel clattered across the rock like a hailstorm. "We're dry," Malik said. "No ammo, no missiles. Fuel's critical, engines coughing. We've got enough juice to hit the LZ, maybe a mile past that. No more." Torres exhaled through her nose, calm and cold. "Then that mile, we burn it buying time." Below, the SEAL team reached a shallow stone basin. It wasn't a proper landing zone, but flat enough for a Black Hawk if it came in light. The wounded CIA asset lay on the ground, gritting his teeth through unconsciousness. His arm hung useless, skin pale as chalk. Commander Rohr keyed his mic. "Bravo to command, requesting immediate evac. Coordinates uploading now." "Black Hawk inbound," command replied. "ETA 10 minutes. 10 minutes. In this place, that was a lifetime. Without air cover, the team wouldn't last half of it. Torres heard everything through the comms. "Black Hawk's 10 minutes out," she relayed to Malik. Her voice was steel. "Then we hold the sky for 11. Malik shot her a side glance. "You're running on adrenaline and fumes." "Good thing adrenaline's cheap." The Apache began a slow orbit over the basin, a lone predator guarding its wounded pack. She had nothing left to fire, but her silhouette alone was enough to make enemies think twice. For now. Movement below caught her eye, fighters spilling down the slope like a swarm of ants. "They're coming," Malik warned. "Let them." Torres angled the Apache forward, rotors chewing the air, and dropped into another low pass. Dust and rock exploded under her wash, sending the insurgents stumbling back. For a heartbeat they hesitated, unsure if death was seconds away. She banked for another run. Still no fire. Still they froze. Then, Salvation roared over the ridge, a Black Hawk hugging the terrain, dropping fast like a bird of prey. The pilot wasted no time. SEALs sprinted for the bird, dragging the wounded asset, covering each other with precise bursts. An insurgent broke free, a launcher on his shoulder. "Back ridge, launcher incoming," Malik barked. "No time," Torres said flatly. She shoved the nose of the Apache down and dove. The insurgent braced, but her shadow hit him first. Raw, crushing fear. He faltered, dropped the launcher, and bolted. Torres hovered over the clearing as the Black Hawk lifted, team safely aboard. Her own fuel alarm shrieked. "Now we run," she said. The Apache clawed skyward, groaning like a wounded animal. Black smoke bled from its battered frame. Warning lights strobed across the console, but Torres's hands moved with the mechanical grace of instinct, checking gauges, coaxing life from a bird that had nothing left to give. Below, the Black Hawk gained altitude, banking west with its precious cargo. Dust spiraled in its wake. "We're not making it back to base," Malik said, voice tight, but even. 3, maybe 4 minutes before she stalls." "Then we stay close to them," Torres replied. "If we fall between them and the enemy." Malik didn't argue. Smoke rose from the valley behind them. Insurgents regrouped fast. Motorbikes, beaten-up trucks, mounted guns. From her cockpit, Torres saw the flash of muzzle fire along the ridge, lighting the dusk like a cursed festival. She keyed the mic. "Command Viper 9. Multiple enemy units still active in AO, requesting secondary strike support. Time is not on our side." "Copy, Viper 9, came the reply. "Airstrike en route, 15-minute window. You are to disengage and RTB immediately." Malik's jaw tightened. "They're pulling us out." "They can say that," Torres muttered. banking low behind the Black Hawk. But the sky still belongs to me. She shadowed the evac bird, a smoke-trailing guardian. Even with empty racks, the Apache's presence screamed, "We're not done." But the enemy was learning. A technical burst from cover racing to flank the Black Hawk. Its 50 cal open fire, rounds sparking off the cliffs, inches from the evac bird. "New contact! Moving fast!" Malik snapped. "We're out of weapons." "Then we get in its face." Torres pushed the stick forward. The Apache dove like a thrown blade. The truck's gunner swung his weapon towards them. Too slow. "Brace!" The world blurred into wind and stone. The driver flinched, swerved. The gunner lost aim. Torres pulled up at the last heartbeat, rotors screaming just feet above the truck. The downdraft slammed into it, flipping the vehicle onto its side. It smashed into a boulder, detonating in a spray of fire and metal. "She just used the chopper like a hammer," Briggs whispered over seal comms, awe bleeding through static. Inside the Blackhawk, Roar turned to the window. His blood-streaked face was tight with raw respect. "That woman," he thought he'd mutter it to no one, "flies like she's got nothing left to lose." In the Apache, Malik checked the gauge again. "We're redlining. Seconds left." Torres didn't answer. Her eyes scanned the terrain. A narrow strip of flat ground hugged the edge of a gulch, half a mile off the seal's path. "That'll do," she said under her breath. The earth rose fast. Torres tilted the pitch, coaxing the dying bird along the rocks and scrub, forcing one last favor from gravity. The skids hit first. The Apache bucked hard. Sparks screamed. The tail boom crumpled, but the cockpit held. Rotors spun one last ragged moment, then choked to silence. Dust settled. The world went still. "You good?" Torres asked, voice low. Malik exhaled, then nodded. "Still here." They unbuckled, boots hitting dry soil. Behind them, the wrecked Apache leaned at an ugly angle, smoke curling from its vents like the final breath of a dying beast. High above, the Black Hawk was already shrinking into the sky, carrying the SEALs and the broken CIA asset to safety. Within seconds, the Black Hawk circled back into view. "They saw us go down," Malik muttered, his voice tight with worry. "They shouldn't come back," Torres said, her eyes sweeping the jagged cliffs, scanning for movement. "Too hot." But they did. The radio crackled to life. "This is Bravo, team. We're coming for you." Torres clicked her mic. "Negative. Stay in the air. You've got wounded on board, and we're already boots on the ground. Do not return." A pause. Then Commander Roar's gravelly voice cut through. "Too late. We don't leave ghosts behind." A heartbeat later, the Black Hawk flared overhead, rotors screaming against the thin mountain air. Two thick ropes whipped down from its open sides, and SEALs began fast roping into the storm of dust below. "Goddamn maniacs," Malik said with a crooked grin, half in disbelief, half in admiration. Sergeant Briggs hit the ground first, rifle up, scanning for threats. "Punch your ticket out! Move! Bird won't hold long!" The pilot's voice followed over the net, tight and urgent. "We're burning hot. 60 seconds." Malik grabbed the rope and started climbing. Torres hesitated for a single breath, her hand brushing the scarred side of her Apache. A silent farewell. "You saved them," she whispered. Then she grabbed the rope and rose into the chaos. Behind her, the valley erupted in fresh gunfire. Fighters had followed the smoke. "Dozens, maybe more," someone shouted. "We're taking fire. Brace for a hot exit," the Black Hawk's pilot called. The helicopter jerked violently as Torres hauled herself inside. A round punched through the lower fuselage with a metallic shriek, sparks scattering across the deck. Another bullet slammed into the rear bulkhead, just feet from Briggs. "Let's go," Roar bellowed. The pilot yanked the collective, the bird clawing for altitude, rotors howling under the strain. Bullets chased them into the open sky, pinging off armor until finally the cliffs dropped away and the darkened valley swallowed their broken Apache below. The helicopter surged forward, battered and burning, climbing just high enough to skim the ridges. Inside, the cabin was a raw knot of energy. Sweat, blood, adrenaline, and the acrid sting of gunpowder clinging to every surface. The CIA asset lay unconscious beside Briggs, his shallow breaths barely lifting his chest. Bandages wrapped around his legs, already soaked deep red. Roar leaned toward the cockpit. How long until we're out of the hot zone? 5 minutes, the pilot shot back, if the skies stay clear. But the skies didn't stay clear. As the Black Hawk banked into open air, a plume of dust appeared on the horizon. Fast, coordinated, purposeful. "Southeast contacts," Malik shouted, peering through the shattered side door. "3 technicals on the road below. Heavy guns mounted." "Full speed," Roar ordered. "We're too slow," the pilot muttered. "If they hit the ridge before we do, we're boxed in." Briggs racked a fresh round into his rifle. "Then we make sure they don't get that far." Torres hauled herself to the doorway, gripping the handrail as wind buffeted the cabin. Below, the lead technical tore across the rocky terrain, its gunner standing tall behind the mounted weapon. 2 more trucks followed, dust pluming in their wake. She scanned their own aircraft. This was an evac bird. No rockets, no cannon, no mounted gun. They were a flying target. "We can't outrun them," Malik said grimly. "They'll hit the ridgeline before we clear it." Torres nodded slowly. "Then I'll buy us time." Malik turned to her, startled. "What the hell are you talking about?" "I'm jumping." His eyes went wide. "You're what?" "In 30 seconds, we pass over that plateau. Narrow, exposed, but above their route. I can stall them, draw fire, delay the climb. Reena, you've got no gear, no rifle, and they're rolling 3 deep." She yanked the emergency kit from its bregan, tearing open Velcro with a harsh rip. Flares, a smoke grenade, 1 lonely sidearm. "Not much," she said, "but enough to scream danger. I just need 5 minutes." Briggs stepped forward. "You're not going alone." "No," she said sharply, "you're not coming. They need shooters on this bird, not heroes." The pilot's voice cut in. 10 seconds to drop zone." Malik's hand clamped around her arm. "Reena, this is suicide." "No," she said, steady as steel. "This is the Costes." And then she was gone. Torres dropped hard, boots slamming into the dusty plateau. She rolled, came up on her feet, and sprinted to the edge as the Black Hawk roared past without slowing. In seconds, it disappeared behind the cliffs, leaving her alone in the high mountain silence. She turned to the rising dust cloud below, lit a flare, and hurled it skyward. The first technical spotted her silhouette and slowed. A second later, the gunner opened fire. Rounds chewed the slope, sending shards of rock spraying like shrapnel. Torres dove behind a boulder, rolled, and fired 3 careful rounds, not to kill, just to make them hesitate. The lead truck swerved for a better angle. That hesitation was all she needed. Above, the Black Hawk pulled farther away. Inside the cabin, Roar barked into the radio. "She's still on the ground." "We'll lose the evac window if we turn back," the pilot warned. Briggs clenched his jaw. "We don't make it out without her." Back on the ridge, Torres slammed a fresh mag into her pistol. Her last. The enemy was closing fast. She popped the smoke grenade and kicked it over the ledge. Thick red vapor cascaded down the slope, shrouding the ridge in a ghostly haze. It worked. Temporarily. The gunners hesitated, squinting for targets. Then one fighter dismounted, rifle slung and a blade on his hip, and began climbing the ridge on foot. Torres crouched low, heart pounding like a drum. The fighter crept past her cover, and she exploded into motion, smashing his knee with the pistol's butt, then driving an elbow into his temple. He crumpled without a sound. A shout rose from below. She couldn't hold this ridge much longer. That wasn't the point. Then salvation roared over the horizon. The sound hit first, a distant thunder that grew into a scream. 2 A-10 Warthogs ripped across the valley, cannons and missiles unleashed in a storm of fire. The first Warthog dove low, obliterating the lead technical in a rolling fireball. The second raked the earth with its GAU-8 cannon, carving trenches into the dirt and scattering fighters in all directions. The radio in her ear burst to life. "Airstrike complete. Enemies neutralized. Confirm friendly on the ground." Torres laughed, breathless and shaky. "Still here. For now." Minutes later, a second Black Hawk approached, riding the wake of the Warthogs. Roar's voice came through, rough but warm. "You better be standing when they land." "Wouldn't miss it," she said. She rose into the swirling red smoke, legs trembling from adrenaline, body scraped and bruised. The helicopter descended in a cyclone of dust, and a hand reached out from the open door. Malek. She grabbed it, hauled herself aboard, and collapsed to the deck. Roar gave her a single nod of respect. Briggs silently handed her a water bottle. The Black Hawk lifted and banked west, leaving the battlefield behind. No enemies followed. No gunfire chased them. Only the soft, steady hum of the rotors and a collective exhale from everyone aboard. Torres leaned back against the vibrating wall, chest rising and falling, every muscle aching. She was bruised, burned, exhausted, but alive. And for now, that was enough. At first light, the base was alive with movement. Humvees roared across the tarmac, rotors thumped in the distance, and medics stood waiting as the second Black Hawk skidded into a landing. A brown cloud of dust rolled across the flight line, masking the bullet holes and burn streaks on the bird's fuselage. Captain Reena Torres was the last to step down, her gait uneven. Her left boot was shredded, her flight suit streaked with dirt and blood. No one said a word, but every eye followed her across the runway. Behind her, Sergeant Briggs and two medics carried the CIA asset, still alive barely, off the ramp. It had been close. Too close. The team scattered without ceremony, the mission done, but morale buried in the dirt. Inside the briefing room, the air was colder than the desert outside. A long table waited, lined with three senior officers, a CIA representative adjusting his glasses, and an internal investigator whose stare felt like steel. Torres entered first, with Warrant Officer Malik, a silent shadow at her back. Neither pilot's face gave anything away. "Captain Torres," the lead officer began, voice sharp enough to cut, "you disobeyed a direct stand-down order from Central Command." "Yes, sir," she said, her spine straight. "Your Apache was already redlined. Fuel critical, hull compromised. You had no air-to-air support. Yet you engaged in offensive maneuvers against protocol. Explain yourself." Torres's voice didn't waver. "Because the SEALs were going to die, sir." The room went dead still. The CIA rep broke the silence first. "You saved one of our critical field assets. That man carried data on an arms pipeline feeding multiple insurgent cells. If he'd died in that ambush, we'd have lost months of work." The investigator wasn't moved. "You also abandoned your airframe mid-extraction to engage hostiles, alone with no ground support." "I delayed them long enough for the Black Hawk to reach safe airspace," Torres said, her voice even. "That was the mission." "No," the investigator snapped, leaning forward. "Your mission was air support, not solo ground combat." Malik's jaw tightened, and he finally spoke. "She didn't go rogue. She bought us time. Time command couldn't give. We were 20 minutes late to that valley." The silence thickened. The senior officer finally raised a hand. "Enough. She may have broken the book, but she saved the chapter. Disciplinary action will be reviewed later. For now, Captain Torres, you are grounded pending board evaluation. Hand over your flight keys." Torres froze, breath catching. "My flight keys?" "Standard procedure," the officer said. 3 days until the board convenes." Malik shifted, but Torres stopped him with a hand. "Understood, sir." She dug into her pocket, pulled out the heavy metal keys and laid them on the table. The clink echoed like a gunshot. Then she turned and left without a word. Outside, life on base rolled on as if nothing had happened. Humvees growled past, sentries paced in the heat, and pilots prepped their birds for routine patrol. But for Torres, the silence inside her burned hotter than the desert sun. Malik caught up to her outside the barracks. "You all right?" She shrugged. "I did what I had to do. That's all." He nodded, then pulled a folded note from his pocket. "This came in while they were chewing us out, from Commander Roar." Torres opened it. "Your actions saved every life on the ground that night. I've seen good pilots, brave ones and foolish ones. You were none of those. You were necessary. Whatever they decide, we know who cleared that valley." Roar Torres blinked once, jaw clenched. "That Marine doesn't waste words." "No," Malik said. "Neither do you." Later that night, the pilot bar was nearly empty. 2 air crews at the counter, a radio tech nursing a beer, and a cook flipping burgers like a man half asleep. Torres sat alone in the corner, boots on the chair across from her, hands wrapped around a mug of black coffee. Briggs walked in, fresh stitches along his cheek, and made a straight line for her table. "You jumped off a chopper with a sidearm and a smoke canister," he said, almost disbelieving. She nodded. "I've made worse decisions." He slid into the chair opposite her, resting a scarred hand on the table. "You didn't just save us. You gave us back something we don't get much of out there. Hope." She looked away. "Doesn't count for much in a boardroom." Briggs smiled faintly. "That's because you don't know what's coming." Before she could ask, the bar's door swung open. Commander Rohr entered first, jaw tight under his vest, followed by the base CO and a man in civilian clothes with the posture of the Pentagon. They went straight to her table. The CO wasted no time. "Captain Torres, your actions during the Garmak ambush have been reviewed." Her jaw tensed. The Pentagon rep stepped forward. "We're not here just to confirm your grounding." Torres braced herself. "We're here to offer you command." Silence. "Say again?" "We're forming a new rapid response gunship unit," the rep continued. "Elite pilot selection, no politics, no red tape. You'll have final authority on missions. We need someone who doesn't just follow rules. We need someone who knows when rules get people killed." Torres blinked slowly. "And if I say no?" Rohr's voice was a low rumble. "Then I'll know you've lost that fire. And I don't believe that for a second." She looked around the table. Malik gave a small nod. Briggs raised his coffee in salute. Torres rose to her feet. "Where's the paperwork?" The CO grinned. "Thought you'd never ask." 2 months later, the desert night rippled under the spinning blades of a black-painted Apache AH-64E crouched in the shadows like a predator. Extended fuel tanks, upgraded avionics, double weapons capacity, retrofitted for speed and precision, kill control, painted discreetly under the cockpit. Revenant 1. Torres stood at the nose, helmet tucked under her arm, staring up at the machine that was hers to command. Inside the hangar, her new hand-picked crew gathered over the night's op briefing. Malik, still her co-pilot in second, Redman, a munitions expert poached from the 160th, and Valdez, a radar and air traffic savant with a talent for bending screens to his will. The mission was surgical. Intel confirmed a rogue warlord, Khaled Drokhshe, the same man whose convoy she'd ambushed in Garmak, was moving through Kunar province under heavy guard. He hadn't died that night, but 4 of his brothers had. Now he traveled with paid mercenaries and cutting-edge tech. Orders were clear: intercept the arms deal, disrupt the transfer, and if possible, eliminate Khaled. Malik strode in and tossed her a data slate. Latest drone pass, 6 vehicles, 3 heavily armored. They're holed up in an abandoned school west of the village. "Civilians?" Torres asked. "Scattered, most cleared 2 days ago, but..." He tapped the screen. A grainy image appeared. A young American male, duct-taped, shoved into a corner. The hallway was quiet except for the echo of boots on tile. Captain Reena Torres narrowed her eyes as a young man passed by, flanked by security. "Who the hell is that?" she thought. "State Department analyst," someone muttered in answer to her unspoken question. Kid was mapping trade routes when they snatched him. Torres clicked her tongue softly. Figures. Redman, the armament officer, appeared next, wheeling a cart stacked with weapons. "Loadouts ready. 12 Hellfires, 6 thermobaric airbursts, and Dazzler rounds for crowd control if we run into civilians." Torres gave a curt nod. "Perfect. Revenant 1 launches in 20. Strap in." Minutes later, her Apache lifted off the tarmac, rotors thundering into the desert night. Darkness swallowed the base, the low-hanging moon casting a dusty, muted glow across the barren landscape. It was the kind of night made for vanishing. Flying low, silent, invisible. The helicopter skimmed less than 50 feet above the sand. "Contact in 90 seconds, Valdez's voice crackled from the rear seat. Torres lowered her visor, eyes locking on the digital feed. Ahead, the abandoned school compound rose from the dunes like a broken tooth, its concrete walls cracked from years of shelling. Trucks were parked in a loose ring, headlights spilling across the courtyard. Guards smoked, laughed, and leaned on their rifles, completely unaware that death was racing toward them in the dark. "Malik, begin scan," she ordered. Her co-pilot's fingers danced over the sensors. Thermal shows 2 guards on the roof, 6 in the courtyard, 2 inside the hallway. Heat signature inside matches the hostage. Torres gripped the control stick tighter. No margin for error tonight. Copy that, arming lasers. She exhaled slowly, centering herself. Let's remind them who owns the Scarpchi. The first Hellfire left the rail with a scream, slicing through the night. It struck the central courtyard like a hammer from the heavens, throwing guards and sand in every direction. The second missile found the watchtower, tearing it apart in a fiery collapse. Chaos erupted below. Gunfire blazed wildly, muzzle flashes flickering like stuttering candles. Panicked mercenaries scrambled to respond, firing RPGs that whistled blindly into the dark. One smashed into a wall, showering the air with broken concrete, but the Apache remained untouched. Enemy scrambling, Malik reported. Khaled's personal vehicle is bolting from the rear. Torres yanked the stick left, the tail rotor whipping. The gun camera locked onto a black SUV, tearing across the sand, a single warm body glowing in the back seat. Target locked. Fire! The missile streaked low across the desert, but then a sudden white flash burst against the horizon. The missile veered off course. The SUV kept running. What the hell? Malik shouted. ECM, Valdez growled. Signal jammers, high grade. Torres gritted her teeth, switching to manual, going guns. She dove low, following the canyon contours, the Apache rattling as they closed the distance. The M230 chain gun roared, stitching the sand with fire. Sparks erupted as rounds chewed into the SUV's bumper, but the driver swerved and weaved, refusing to die. Then came the voice, first static, then a cold, accented English cutting through their comms. Still alive, Apache. I owe you 4 graves. Come earn yours. Torres's pulse jumped. Khaled. Malek's hands flew over the radio. He's on an open channel. Let him talk, Torres said, her voice flat and icy. He just signed his death warrant. The SUV swerved onto a narrow mountain road, too tight for missiles, too risky for a full gun run. Torres stayed on him, low and fast, her heart pounding. Set me up for a slope descent, she barked. Reena, that's manual override. Do it. Malik cursed under his breath and flipped the controls. You've got 30 seconds before we're exposed on that ridge. Torres took full control, letting the Apache skim the steep drop, hugging the canyon's curve. Her breath came slow and deliberate. Up ahead, the SUV hit a patch of loose rock and skidded sideways. Now, she squeezed the trigger. The chain gun's burst ripped through the SUV's hood, flipping the vehicle end over end until it slammed into the canyon wall. Fire blossomed in the dark. Silence. No taunts on the radio now. Malik scanned the wreck. Multiple heat signatures, none moving. Torres stared at the burning wreckage. Her voice was low, steady. One warlord down. The comms crackled to life. Raven team here. Hostage secure, compound cleared. Requesting evac window. She let out a slow breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Revenant 1 to Raven team. Airspace is clear. You're good to go. The Apache rose, circling the ruins below. Fires flickered and died in the sand. Mission complete. But in the pit of her stomach, a cold knot twisted. Some ghosts don't stay buried. 3 weeks after Khaled's death, Captain Reena Torres stood in a Pentagon conference room that gleamed like a surgical theater. Polished floors reflected harsh light. Windows mirrored the city like silver glass. Her after-action report had just ended. Around the table sat the heavyweights. Army brass, CIA, NSA, faces carved in stone. No applause, no nods. No one even blinked. General Carnes, head of Joint Special Operations, finally leaned forward. Captain Torres, you violated your mission perimeter. You risked civilian casualties. You executed a manual slope descent against protocol. But, he paused, you succeeded. Torres didn't flinch. I followed the threat, neutralized it, saved the hostage. The room stayed silent, a wall of unreadable eyes. Carnes nodded once. That Apache of yours, you modified it off-book. I made her lethal, Torres answered without hesitation. That's what she's for. The general's mouth tightened. Dismissed. She left the room the same way she left battlefields. Composed, unshaken, unreadable. In the hallway, Malik leaned against a pillar, arms crossed. You in trouble? No more than usual, she said dryly. They don't like it when war turns personal. Malik smirked. They're jealous. You turned a ghost into a legend. They were almost to the elevator when Torres's phone buzzed. Redmond's message lit the screen with 2 words. We have a problem. Back at the desert hangar, Redmond's face was grim as he pulled up encrypted drone footage. This came in from an NSA sweep after the Khalid op, he said. Routine, except someone spliced the satellite feed before it reached Yencom. He tapped the screen. Torres's eyes narrowed. The video showed her patchy minutes before the convoy engagement. But something was off. Explosions were out of sequence. Her targeting reticle fired too early, and a single civilian body was highlighted in red near the wreckage. I never targeted that building, she whispered. That's fake. Redmond nodded. Someone wants it to look like you did, and someone high enough to know the feed routes. Malik swore under his breath. They're setting her up. Valdez stepped forward. That's not the worst part. I traced the tampered footage. It was routed through a server in Langley. CIA shell company. Torres stared at the burning pixels. Her jaw tightened. They're not just smearing me. They're erasing something bigger. 2 nights later, the truth cracked wide open. They intercepted a private transmission, a State Department proxy discussing Khalid. The memo was chilling. Khalid had never been authorized for elimination, and worse, he had secretly been on the CIA payroll for 5 years, feeding intel on Chinese-backed arms deals and quietly helping U.S. operations from the shadows. Captain Reena Torres had been a soldier her entire adult life, a master of the Apache attack helicopter and one of the few pilots trusted with the most dangerous missions. Yet now she sat in a dimly lit office, staring at the trembling hands of Redmond as he handed her a report that felt heavier than any weapon she had ever carried. They're going to frame you, Reena, he said, his voice tight with fear. They're calling you rogue, vigilante. They'll say you went off mission and made it personal. For a long moment, Torres said nothing. The hum of the fluorescent lights above filled the silence. Finally, she spoke, her voice steady and low. I didn't go rogue. They let a warlord live because he was convenient. He kidnapped an American. He murdered SEALs. He threatened my team. He was using tech no warlord should ever have had access to, and I stopped him. If that makes me rogue, she exhaled, her jaw tightening. Fine. Beside her, Warrant Officer Malik shifted his weight, his expression unreadable. So what now? Reena rose from the chair slowly, the decision already carved into her heart. We go public. Not to the media, they'll twist it, but to the people who care more about soldiers than about secrets. The ones who can't ignore the truth once they see it. Days later, in a sealed Senate briefing room, lined with armed guards and the muted glow of secure monitors, Reena Torres told everything. She brought evidence that could not be denied, encrypted logs, drone footage, audio transmissions, mission reports. She played the raw combat feeds showing Khaled's attacks on U.S. forces, his betrayal laid bare even as he drew a CIA paycheck. Every name, every connection, every shadowed corner of Operation Silk Dagger was exposed. The fallout struck faster than a missile. 2 senior CIA officials were suspended. Langley's servers were seized for investigation. A covert intelligence manipulation program designed to twist field reports and influence international arms markets was dragged into the light. Torres didn't wait for the headlines. The day after the hearing, she quietly stepped away from active Apache command. Months passed. One cool morning in New Mexico, Reena stood alone on the windswept tarmac, watching the sunrise burn across the desert skies. The horizon glowed like molten fire, and for the first time in years, her hands weren't clenched around a control stick. A black SUV rolled to a stop beside her. The tinted window hummed down, revealing Carnes. His expression was unreadable, as always. They're giving you a choice, he said. Stay in, transfer to Intel Command, or go private. Blackgate wants you as a contractor. 6 figures, no leash. Fly where they tell you, hit what they tell you. Reena's head tilted slightly, and she gave a soft, almost amused exhale. I'm not flying to clean up someone else's mess. Not anymore. Carnes studied her. Then what? What are you going to do? A faint smile crossed her face. Build something of my own. Pilots deserve better. Truth deserves better. He watched her for a long moment, his eyes narrowing just slightly. You're dangerous, Torres. She met his gaze, unflinching. That's why I'm still alive. 1 year later, a remote airfield. The desert night was cool and the hum of generators echoed softly in the hangar. Slowly, the massive doors rolled open, revealing a shape that stole the breath from the air itself. A new combat helicopter, sleek, fast, armored with custom plating and bristling with AI-enhanced systems designed so that no pilot could ever again be kept in the dark. Painted on the side in stark, bold letters, Revenant 2, and beneath it, stenciled with quiet defiance, own the skeek and own the truth. Reena Torres stood beside her creation, no longer just a pilot, no longer a soldier who followed someone else's orders. She was a builder, a leader, a name whispered in briefing rooms and across desert camps, a ghost that lived in every cautionary tale of those who tried to bury the truth. They had tried to silence her. Instead, they made her a legend,